Negative thoughts in your mind that you aren't good enough, that you'll never be successful? If so, you're not alone. I've had those thoughts playing in my mind ever since I took the leap to become an entrepreneur. It's a dirty, dark secret that no one likes to talk about, as the glamorization of becoming an entrepreneur is shown in the media. I realized that in order to succeed, I needed help. We all do. So I decided to go all in on myself, spending thousands of hours in the trenches, reading, joining groups, listening to podcasts, hiring coaches to develop a bulletproof morning routine for success. Join me on my journey as together we build our morning fire to ignite our lives as entrepreneurs. My name is Jeff Wickersham, and this is the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. Welcome to the show. I am excited to have special guest Bri Seeley on the show. Bri, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You are quite welcome. So let's get into state. So I love changing our state, getting our entry level up so we have a fantastic conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 power breaths. And I define a power breath in through the belly, up through the chest. We're going to raise our hands above our head. All right. So let's go ahead and breathe in and out. Good. Another breath in and out. Final breath in and out. All right, now we're going to get the energy level up. So I'm going to count down 3, 2, 1. Yell boom at the top of my lungs. I know was it a cat that was climbing around there? There she is. So you don't have to scream too loud because I don't want her to claw you, but
she's deaf. No,
okay.
She's fine. She's like sitting here watching me move, being like, what are you doing?
I love it. I love it. All right. So when I get to 1, we're going to yell boom at the top of our lungs in 3, 2, 1, and boom.
Boom.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you for playing along. So love what you're all about. Excited to get into the conversation. Morning habits, rituals, routine is kind of what I eat, sleep, and breathe on a daily basis. What are a couple things you do right when you wake up that set you down that path towards success?
Well, I actually feel really blessed because I never get the opportunity to sleep in. And it's one of the things that, I both kind of concurrently love and hate, but this one right here is my morning alarm. And so the first thing, honestly, that I do every single morning is I feed her. And so it's kind of nice in that, even if I wake up and I have any problems lingering from the day before or whatever, the first thing I do is that I have to be in service to her. And it's just such a beautiful way to have the first thing. Granted, there are some mornings where I'm like grumbling, right? But right. It's nice to have her. She keeps me on schedule. She keeps me on track. And I just get to get up and be of service to her first thing. And then while she's eating, once I put her dish down, I make myself a cup of tea. And it's really just an opportunity for me to start waking up and really getting myself prepared for the day ahead. And so while my tea is boiling, generally it's like taking a few deep breaths, maybe doing some stretches, maybe taking, a few laps around the kitchen island, but really just starting to wake up my body, wake up my mind, and get myself in the right space for the day. And then generally I come and I sit here on my hot pink couch with my cup of tea and I start meditating and I do my journaling practice and then just really ask myself what else that I need that morning. Some mornings I get out my coloring book and I give myself some space to be creative. Some mornings I get out the book that I'm working on and, we'll do some writing for my books. Some mornings I grab a fiction book and just get lost in a story. But really my whole morning, I spend about 2 to 3 hours every single morning, simply just filling myself up and making sure that my energy and my mindset is all moving in the right direction for the day ahead.
I love that. Love that time you spend on yourself and the cat waking you up. So if you're listening to this, Bri has her kitten or her cat right near her. It's funny you mentioned that. So we have 2 cats in our household, and the youngest one, Pepper, she will wake me up. But typically I get up around 4. Now she starts backing it down to 3:30. So I've had to shut the door and use the alarm clock. But I would say your perspective on them waking you up, wanting to eat. It's not that pounding alarm clock. It's the cat probably jumping up on the bed and saying it's time to eat. So that's pretty cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and share that with my audience so they contextually know where you're coming from.
I've been an entrepreneur on my own for 15 years, but I was also raised by an entrepreneur. So my mom has been a buyer for many, many, many years, and she owned multiple businesses when I was growing up. And so I kind of got into the entrepreneurial mindset at a very young age. Although it's funny, I watched what she went through and I was like, that is not for me. Absolutely not. I am not taking that path. And so I did get a day job, and I had a day job for 7 years while I was building my first business. And then realized more and more and more how I just need freedom. Like, freedom is my top core value, and working for someone else under someone else's rules and someone else's eye, like, just doesn't work for me. Like, if I want to have a day, and generally today I'd be sitting at my desk working, but today I'm like, my energy's a little low today. Like, I just want to have a day where I'm working on the couch with peaches in my lap. Right. So the more and more I realized how much freedom I actually need, I was like, okay, I'm going to be serious about this entrepreneurship thing. So my first business was a fashion brand. I had that from 2007 to 2015. I ended up closing it and walking away in 2015 because I realized that as much as I love fashion, I have 2 degrees in fashion design. I lived in Italy for several years studying fashion design. I am a very, very, very good and talented fashion designer. One, I do not like the business of fashion. And 2, fashion is not a freedom-inducing business. So I walked away from that. I still do it as a hobby. In fact, for anyone who's watching, I still have my mannequin just lives in my living room with me still. I still sew for myself. But I realized that the universe was kind of calling me for more. And so I started listening, and people have been asking me for years, how have you done what you've done with your fashion business? Can you teach me to do that for my own business? And so I said yes, and just started down the path of coaching. And the interesting thing is, the day job that I had for 7 years while growing my other business was as a counselor. And so I walk away and I'm like, oh, I have 7 years of experience as a counselor and 8 years of experience as an entrepreneur. What if I were to just combine the two and, have the freedom to work from anywhere? My laptop is my office, and help entrepreneurs just really be successful in their businesses, because I've seen a lot. I've done retail, I've done wholesale, I've done product, I've done service, I've done online, I've done in-person, I've done events. Like, I've had so much experience in the business world that I pretty much can help anyone with anything at this point. So I walked into that 6 years ago, and it's been going very, very, very well ever since. And honestly, I love what I do. I love who I get to help. I love the freedom I get to support others in creating in their lives. And it's lovely.
Thanks for sharing that. One of the questions I have is, so I was in the corporate space for about 20 years and then went into entrepreneurship. And one of the things I continually think about is I never want to go back to that piece. And it is all about the freedom. Very, very, very in line with what you're thinking there is that freedom to just, hey, when you have a day, you want to work on the couch, just work on the couch, right? You're your own boss. And that's so important, that you have one of those core values that drives you. And I love how both experiences that you had in the past kind of lined up, and you combine them, right? You how obviously people were asking you how you built your business, but what was sort of the process or the discovery that you went through to say, boy, all of a sudden these two could be combined and I could make it a successful business venture?
Well, it's so funny because I had already been in this business and been doing this business when I realized that I had the experience that I had to be doing this business. Like, that wasn't purposeful at all.
Okay.
I realized it later and then was like, oh, right, I am actually very qualified to be doing what I'm doing. But the process for me, kind of like leaving fashion and getting into this, was a really interesting one, because my identity was so wrapped up in being a fashion designer that I had to almost go through an entire ego death and like totally, fully, completely deconstruct who I thought I was in the world in order to reemerge in this new light. And the way that I did that, honestly, was, I'm very, very grateful. About a week before I decided to close my fashion business, I hired a coach.
Okay.
And so she was with me, really supporting me and encouraging me and helping me, one, through that ego and identity death, and then 2, in identifying kind of like what my next steps were going to be. And I actually emailed her, I think it was 2 years ago, and I was like, I just need you to know that, like, hiring you in 2015 still impacts my life on a daily basis today, 6 years later.
That's awesome. She probably absolutely loved that note you sent, I would think.
Yeah, she did. Because she said, she's like, I often wonder if what I do has that kind of impact on people's lives. And I was like, well, I'm telling you right now, right here, it absolutely does. So like save this email and read it whenever you need.
There you go. Yeah, have that cookie in the cookie jar when you feel like, hey, it's a down day, something you can pull from that will inspire and fulfill you, and say, yep, that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's so vitally important. So I know we wanted to get into what we can all learn from Olympic athletes. I love this subject because I've always been into physical fitness. I coach my sons in football and basketball, work out all the time. The Olympics just ended. We watched a lot of the Olympics. So let's dive into that. So what are some things that we can learn from Olympic athletes?
So I think there's two really that came out for me that were the most poignant during these games that are probably not the ones that people expect. And the first one that comes to mind, of course, is Simone Biles, and how she knew her limits and how she prioritized her needs and her mental health. Instead of pushing herself and potentially harming herself, she stepped away and knew what was best for her. And I think that there's something to be said about that for entrepreneurship as well, because, we live in this, entrepreneurship is so full of like the hustle mindset and like just do whatever it takes and like, really do whatever you need to do to kind of sacrifice yourself in the process of building this business. And, right. Kind of how I mentioned the values in the beginning, that's one of the first things I teach entrepreneurs is you have to identify your values. Like you have to know that your business cannot exist without you. And so if you're not prioritizing your needs, if you're not prioritizing what's important to you, if you're not prioritizing your mental health, you don't have a business. And so I thought that that was actually a really beautiful lesson for her to say, I know what's best for me in this moment. And unfortunately, it's not going for gold right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I would say initially when she pulled out of the competition, that old school mindset that is still in my mind from growing up and playing football and just gritting through things kicked in. And I was like, well, she's letting her team down. So I always need to take time and digest. And as I did, I said, one, she was pulling out to make sure her team had a chance to win a medal, because if she stayed in, there's no way they would have done that. Two, her mental health obviously was a priority. And three, her physical health. If she's up doing a flip and she loses her, frame of reference and falls on her head, she could really get harmed. So it was interesting to go through just personally the journey of she's letting her team down because that's the way I was kind of raised, to wait a second. No, she was actually putting her team before it, and then taking her mental health so seriously and putting it as a priority. So I would agree with you there.
Yeah. And what a blessing too. Like, I feel like, I look at even my parents and my grandparents and stuff, and how often did they just push through it? Right. When like, is that really the best option for us every single day? Like some days, believe me, I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps and be like, come on, like get your shit together. Like, let's go.
Yes.
But there's other days where I'm like, I tend to be very hard on myself. And is that necessary? Like, do I really need to be mean to myself and belittle myself and abuse myself, when in actuality, I could just have compassion for exactly where I'm at and let myself be imperfect and let myself, deal with whatever struggles I'm facing at the time instead of just pushing through them. So I thought that for her to do it on an international stage like that was immensely powerful. And I just hope so many people take so much away from that in their own lives as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say, being hard on ourselves, we're the only species that continues to beat ourselves up for what we didn't do yesterday, 2 days ago, 2 years ago. And if we would just give ourselves grace a little bit more, we would be so much happier. And I love the point you make. Hey, that grit, that hustle, entrepreneurs just grinding through it. Yes, there are times I'm in a similar journey as you, where there are times where I'm like, okay, just take a little break. If you want to do this, take some time, rather than that always hustle, because that's where burnout kicks in, right? As you just get completely burned out, fried. And I would say that many times is why people give up in the entrepreneur game, is they're just like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And we really have like a limited capacity for energetic output. And so if you're not resting, if you're not refilling your cup, if you're not taking time for that morning practice every single day, your lifespan as an entrepreneur is significantly shortened. So I'm a huge, as you were saying, we're the only species that's hard on ourselves. I was literally sitting here looking at Peaches being like, cats are like the perfect example of this. She just does what she wants when she wants. And granted, she has, quite a lush life. She's very taken care of. But yeah, she doesn't get down on herself. She just keeps, in her little happy place. And so I think there's a lot to be said to learn from animals as well in this area. So
absolutely. So that was the first example for Olympic athletes, right?
Yes.
Simone Biles. What was the second?
So the second one is, and I don't recall all the details about this. I'm not a huge detail person, but there was someone that won. I think he was a British, and I don't remember what sport, but he won a silver medal.
Okay.
And he came out and he was basically like, screw this. I'm not wearing, he didn't wear it on the podium. He didn't wear his silver medal. And he was like, because I didn't win gold, this medal doesn't exist to me, essentially. And he was almost ungrateful for it. He was a little rude. He was a little just kind of entitled in a way. And I thought that it was kind of a really good example of like how sometimes we have more to learn when we don't win gold than when we do. Because he clearly, this kid, and he was young, he was, I think, in his 20s, has a lot to learn about life. That like you can't be the gold medal winner all day, every day. Like it just doesn't work that way. Life is cyclical. There's ups, there's downs. There's times you're going to do really well, and times when you're just not. And again, I think like having that compassion for yourself and saying, wow, like could I have shown up better? Yeah, I probably could have. Could I have pushed myself a little bit harder? Yeah, I probably could have. But like I'm at the Olympics, which already means I'm one of the best of the best of the best of the best.
Right.
And I did win a medal. So like what, it just was, it was a poor display of sportsmanship. It was a poor display of, compassion. I thought that it could have been done better. And even before the Olympics happened, I had written some articles about what we could all learn from Olympic athletes. And one of them was that like sometimes winning the gold isn't the point of it all. And I think that he really embodied that. And I truly, truly, truly hope that he's able to reflect on that experience and learn a lot from it. Because I think there's a lot there for him.
Yeah, I would agree in that scenario because you were the second best in the world at that point, right? And that is tremendous. And I would say the polar opposite is, I don't know if you saw this, but I think it was in the men's high jump. There was two guys that were tied at the end, and I'm pretty sure they were friends. But basically, the judges got together with them and said, "You guys can have a jump off." And they said, nope, let's share the gold medal. And like the one guy leaped into the other guy's arms, and it was such a, they were both gold medalists. And it was such more of what the Olympic spirit is embodied more than the other piece. But to the gentleman who won the silver, listen, you're going to learn, and there are harsh lessons in life, and that's part of maturing. And I'm sure he's going to look back on that and say, I wish I handled it differently later in life. So love those two examples. And that kind of leads us right into great segue into how do we keep going when you have a feeling like you're a failure, or when you're feeling like a failure?
Yeah. So I will be really, really, really transparent with you up front about this. This is something, and I say this because a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh my God, you're so successful. You're number one on Google. You're all these things. You do all these things. And I am just coming out of about a 2.5 week period of like not feeling like a success, like really, truly like feeling like a failure. And in fact, I actually drove home to Minnesota to be with my parents for about 10 days because I was like, I just need to be like held in a container where like they just love me and I'm just taken care of, right? So I say this not from a place of like being on some sort of pedestal or being on some sort of high horse. I say this from like, I've been going through it right now recently as well. And one of the things that always helps me is a shift in perspective, right? So like I have my own podcast called The Success Diaries, and really, truly, oftentimes what happens when we're feeling like we're not successful is that we're operating from someone else's definition of success. And so gaining that perspective of like, okay, I'm looking at this situation right now as a failure. Is that because potentially I'm trying to play by some rules of some game that aren't even my rules? And so like giving yourself space to sit down and journal a little bit about what is my definition of success, and really truly like looking at it with a neutral eye, instead of like the eye, like we talked about, how judgmental and hard we are on ourselves,
Right.
looking at it through a neutral perspective and just saying like, is this true? Are these stories that I'm telling myself about being a failure, are they actually true? Right. So I think that that's a really important one. Another thing that I love to do when I'm feeling like a failure, and I kind of mentioned this when I was talking about having a coach of my own, is that I keep a proof folder. I have one on my phone. I have one on my laptop. I have one in my email inboxes. When a past client, or even someone that just finds me on socials or whatever, says like, oh my gosh, you impacted my life, you helped with this or that, I save it. And I refer back to those things to remind myself of the truth in those moments. And then I think the third thing that I really do is I just start celebrating all of the small wins, because it can get really, if we're always waiting for the big win, and the big win might take 5 years to get to, which means that for 365 days, five years running, you're feeling like a failure until you hit that big goal. And then once you hit it, your marker's changed and you're going for a different big goal, and then you're back in fail mode again, right? So celebrating every single step of the way is also really important to me, to stay in that energy of success and kind of as much as I can out of that kind of fail mode.
Yeah, I love what you brought up there. One is operating from someone else's definition of success. I would also challenge that sometimes it's our own definition of success, an expectation that wasn't met. When you take a step back and put some truth to it, it can be very powerful and very telling that you said, wow, I didn't get there, but I did a tremendous job. And I love the example of having proof. I do a very similar thing where I have snippets of emails, of posts that people put, that when you have those downtimes, being able to refer back and really feel that feeling, that energy, that positivity that you put out there, you get it, and you can snap yourself out of it pretty quickly. So love all three of those pieces that you shared. So Bri, I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. Where can I know there's something you want to give away to the audience, as well as where can people find you?
Yes. So I have a really great masterclass that I just developed. It's for newer entrepreneurs and also side hustlers to help you really get into full-time entrepreneurship. And so you can access that for free. You can go to leap, leap.briseeley.com. And then anyone can find me on my website, which is also just briseeley.com. And my favorite place to hang out on the interwebs, if you actually want to talk to me, is on Instagram. And again, my handle is Bri Seeley. If you do come connect with me there, please, please, please send me a DM. I love voice memoing back and forth with people and having conversations. So send me a message. Tell me you saw me on Jeff's podcast, and would love to hear from you.
Awesome, Bri. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
You're so welcome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day. Rise, fight, love, repeat. Get after it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Morning Fire for Entrepreneurs podcast. You now have the knowledge, but without action, knowledge is useless. Choose to act. Choose to step into your greatness and unlock that hero inside of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review so more entrepreneurs can hear this message. If you absolutely love this podcast, which I hope you do, then share it up with someone you know who might see benefit from it. Become that beacon of change, and together we can impact the world.